Hi guys, and thank you so much for joining me. If you are new here, I'm Kat and I like to talk about true crime, conspiracies and all sorts of related things. Today, let's talk about the CIA and Wikileaks. But before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. Yeah, I know that my pigtails, one is longer, the other one is shorter. I have no idea why. Anyway, this video is crazy, so I guess my hair is crazy as well today. Apart from that, all the information I'm giving you in today's video is already found in the public domain. I also don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in the video. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Thank you so much. Let's get started. In 2017, as Julian Assange began his fifth year hidden in Ecuador's embassy in London, the CIA plotted to kidnap the Wikileaks founder. Some senior officials inside the CIA and the Trump administration even talked about killing Assange, going as far as requesting sketches or options for how to assassinate him. Discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange happened at the highest levels of the Trump administration, according to a former senior counterintelligence official. Quote, "There seem to be no boundaries," end of quote. The conversations were part of an unprecedented CIA campaign directed against Wikileaks and its founder. The agency's plans also included extensive spying on Wikileaks associates, creating discord among the group's members and stealing their electronic devices. While Assange was on the radar of the US intelligence agencies for years, these plans for an all-out war against him were sparked by Wikileaks' ongoing publication of extraordinarily sensitive CIA hacking tools known collectively as Vault 7. Which the agency concluded represented the largest data loss in CIA history. I will cover Vault 7 and everything that it's about in a video of its own. President Trump's newly installed CIA director Mike Pompeo was looking for revenge on Wikileaks and Assange, who found refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy since 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden on rape allegations that he denied. Pompeo and other top agency leaders were completely detached from reality because they were so embarrassed about Vault 7, according to a former national security officer. The CIA's fury at Wikileaks led Pompeo to publicly describe the group in 2017 as a non-state hostile intelligence service. This designation opened the door for agency operatives to take far more aggressive actions, treating the organization as it does adversary spy services. Within months, US spies were monitoring the communications and movements of several Wikileaks staff, including audio and visual surveillance of Assange himself. The story, exposed by an extraordinary Yahoo News investigation, is based on conversations with more than 30 ex-US officials, 8 of whom describe details of the CIA's proposals to abduct Assange. The investigation also exposes new details about the US government's war on Wikileaks. It was a campaign headed by Pompeo that banned important legal limitations, potentially jeopardized the Justice Department's work towards prosecuting Assange, and risked a damaging episode in the United Kingdom, the US's closest ally. Assange is now housed in a London prison as the courts decide on a US request to extradite the Wikileaks founder on charges of attempting to help former US Army analyst Chelsea Manning break into a classified computer network and conspiring to obtain and publish classified documents in violation of the Espionage Act. Quote, "My hope and expectation is that the UK courts will consider this information and, it will further bolster its decision not to extradite to the US. End of quote. This is what Pollack said. There is no indication that the most extreme measures targeting Assange were ever approved, in part because of objections from White House lawyers. The CIA's Wikileaks proposals worried administration officials so much that they quietly reached out to staffers and members of Congress and Senate intelligence committees and asked to alert them to what Pompeo was suggesting. There were serious intel oversight concerns that were being raised through this escapade, said a Trump national security official. Some National Security Council officials worried that the CIA's proposals to kidnap Assange would not only be illegal, but also might jeopardize the prosecution of the Wikileaks founder. Concerned the CIA's plans would derail a potential criminal case, the Justice Department expedited the drafting of charges against Assange to ensure that they were in place if he were brought to the US. In late 2017, in the middle of the debate over kidnapping and other extreme measures, the agency's plans were stalled when US officials picked up what they viewed as alarming reports that Russian intelligence operatives were preparing to sneak Assange out of the UK and take him away to Moscow. The intelligence reporting about a possible breakout was viewed as credible at the highest levels of the US government. At the time, Ecuadorian officials began efforts to grant Assange diplomatic status as part of a scheme to give him cover to leave the embassy and fly to Moscow to serve in the country's Russian mission. In response, the CIA and the White House began preparing for a number of scenarios to foil Assange's Russian departure plans. But of course, the US, they always want to be on top, right? Those included potential gun battles with Kremlin operatives on the streets of London, crashing a car into a Russian diplomatic vehicle transporting Assange and then grabbing him and shooting out the tires of a Russian plane carrying Assange before it could take off for Moscow. Allegedly, US officials asked their British counterparts to do the shooting if gunfire was required, and allegedly the British agreed. We had all sorts of reasons to believe he was contemplating getting the hell out of there, said the former senior administration official, adding that one report said Assange might try to escape the embassy hidden in a laundry cart. It was going to be like a Prison Break movie. The intrigue over a potential Assange escape set off a wild scramble among rival spy services in London. American, British and Russian agencies, among others, stationed undercover operatives around the Ecuadorian embassy. In the Russians' case, it was to facilitate a breakout. For the US and allied services, it was to block the escape. It got to the point where every human being in a 3-block radius was working for one of the intelligence services, whether they were street sweepers or police officers or security guards. White House officials briefed Trump and warned him that this could provoke an international incident or even worse. As the debate over Wikileaks intensified, some in the White House worried that the campaign against the organization would end up weakening America by lowering barriers that prevent the government from targeting mainstream journalists and news organizations. When Wikileaks launched its website in December 2006, it was a nearly unprecedented model. Anyone, anywhere could submit materials anonymously for publication. And they did, on topics ranging from secret fraternity rights to details of the US government's Guantanamo Bay detainee operations. Yet, Assange, the Australian activist who led the organization, didn't get much attention until 2010.
When Julian Assange appeared at the National Press Club in April 2010 to release a video depicting a U.S. Apache military helicopter killing 18 people, including 2 Reuters journalists,
This particular event this is clearly murder.
he was hailed in some circles as a hero.
We really owe a debt to Mr. Assange and to Wikileaks.
In the months that followed, Wikileaks released massive tranches of classified and sensitive documents related to the U.S. wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq, as well as more than 250,000 U.S. diplomatic cables. As U.S. intelligence agencies scrambled to deal with leaks on a scale never seen before, Assange rose to worldwide stardom, and for some, infamy.
Government secrets, lies, and embarrassing facts. They're all on the web for anyone to see.
The story behind the biggest leak in intelligence history, profile on me.
I thank President Correa for the courage he has shown in considering and in granting me political asylum.
The Obama administration struggled with the First Amendment issues surrounding charging Assange with crimes related to the disclosure of classified information.
The fact is, these documents don't reveal any issues that haven't already informed our public debate.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
With the advent of the Trump
It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is. A non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia.
While the kidnapping plot never came to pass, President Trump was briefed and warned that the matter could provoke an international incident.
I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing.
Other officials, including Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was, quote, very, very anti-Assange, argued that Assange's case was best handled through overt legal channels.
The Attorney General will be involved in that, and he'll make a decision.
By 2019, the Swedes had dropped their investigation into Assange, but the WikiLeaks founder had also worn out his welcome in the Ecuadorian embassy. Exactly 9 years and 6 days after his first appearance at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., Assange was evicted and released into British custody. That same day, the US government unsealed its initial indictment of Assange. A British judge initially ruled that Assange could not be extradited to the United States, citing a high risk of suicide. But in July, a UK court formally permitted a US appeal to move forward.
You can't even imagine how pleased I am with that WikiLeaks actually leaked this video, because it shows exactly what the Americans, and not only the Americans, the US and any other country who is always in some kind of a war, the length that they are willing to go to just to get to the target that they are trying to get to. But of course that the US government and the CIA, they got pissed off with this, because they don't want people to know what exactly they are doing. They want people, you know how it is, they just want to be portrayed like the good, nice people who help others and stuff, but they don't want to be seen as killers of innocent people, women, men, children, and so on. And the amount of damage that they did when they went to war everywhere is just unimaginable. Assange was hailed both a hero and a villain. For US intelligence and law enforcement agencies, the question was how to deal with the group, which operated differently than typical news outlets. The problem posed by WikiLeaks was there wasn't anything like it, said a former intelligence official. The Obama administration, fearful of the consequences for press freedom and chastened by the blowback from its own aggressive leak hunts, restricted investigations into Assange and WikiLeaks. That began to change in 2013, when Edward Snowden, a National Security Agency contractor, fled to Hong Kong with a massive trove of classified materials, some of which revealed that the US government was illegally spying on Americans, on their own people. What a surprise, right? WikiLeaks helped arrange Snowden's escape to Russia from Hong Kong. A WikiLeaks editor also accompanied Snowden to Russia, staying with him during his 39-day enforced stay at the Moscow airport and living with him for 3 months after Russia granted Snowden asylum. In the wake of the Snowden revelations, the Obama administration allowed the intelligence community to prioritize collection on WikiLeaks, according to Evanina, now the CEO of the Evanina Group. Previously, if the FBI needed a search warrant to go into the group's databases in the US or wanted to use subpoena power or a national security letter to gain access to Wikileaks related financial records, that wasn't going to happen. But that changed after 2013. From that point onward, US intelligence worked closely with friendly spy agencies to build a picture of Wikileaks' network of contacts and tie it back to hostile state intelligence services. The CIA assembled a group of analysts known unofficially as the Wikileaks team in its Office of Transnational Issues with a mission to examine the organization. Top intelligence officials lobbied the White House to redefine Wikileaks and some high-profile journalists as information brokers, which would have opened up the use of more investigative tools against them, potentially paving the way for their prosecution. It was a step in the direction of showing a court, if we got that far, that we were dealing with agents of a foreign power, a former senior counterintelligence official said. Among the journalists, which some US officials wanted to designate as information brokers, were Glenn Greenwald, then a columnist for The Guardian, and Laura Poitras, a documentary filmmaker who had both been instrumental in publishing documents provided by Snowden. So you see where I'm getting at with this? Everything that people are working to expose the CIA and the US, they are trying to, sweep it under the rug, as they say. They don't want people to find out the truth. That's what it is. And it's been happening for so long. And it will keep happening. It will keep happening. Because that's how they need to control people. The Obama administration's policy was, if there's published works out there, doesn't matter the venue, then we have to treat them as First Amendment protected individuals. There were some exceptions to that rule, but they were very, very few and far between. Wikileaks, the administration decided, did not fit that exception. In a statement to Yahoo News, Laura Poitras reported attempts to classify herself, Glenn Greenwald and Assange as information brokers rather than journalists are bone-chilling and a threat to journalists worldwide. This is what I'm saying. If you are trying to expose them, they are trying to give you a different terminology so that they can gain more control over you. You see, everybody's saying that we have freedom of speech. However, as you later find out, freedom of speech is not so free anymore. Because once they categorize you in a certain way, then your freedom of speech is taken away from you. And that's how it works. They will always find a way, a work around it. Always. That the CIA also conspired to seek the rendition and extrajudicial assassination of Julian Assange is a state-sponsored crime against the press, she also added. I am not the least bit surprised that the CIA, a long-time authoritarian and anti-democratic institution, plotted to find a way to criminalize journalism and spy on and commit other acts of aggression against journalists, Greenwald told Yahoo News. By 2015, Wikileaks was the subject of an intense debate over whether the organization should be targeted by law enforcement or spy agencies. Some argued that the FBI should have sole responsibility for investigating Wikileaks, with no role for the CIA or the NSA. The Justice Department in particular was very protective of its authorities over whether to charge Assange and whether to treat Wikileaks like a media outlet, according to Robert Litt, the intelligence community's senior lawyer during the Obama administration. Then, in the summer of 2016, at the height of the presidential election season, Wikileaks began publishing Democratic Party emails. The US intelligence community later concluded the Russian military intelligence agency, known as the GRU, hacked the emails. In response to the leak, the NSA began surveilling the Twitter accounts of the suspected Russian intelligence operatives who were disseminating the leaked Democratic Party emails, according to a former CIA official. This collection of emails revealed direct messages between the operatives who went by the username Guccifer 2.0 and Wikileaks Twitter account. Assange, at the time, denied that the Russian government was the source for the emails, which were also published by mainstream news organizations. Even so, Assange's communication with the suspected operatives settled the matter for some US officials. The events of 2016 really crystallized US intelligence officials' belief that the Wikileaks founder was acting in collusion with people who were using him to hurt the interests of the US. It's always about hurting the interests of the US, and this is always the excuse. Oh my God, you don't need to take it from me as a foreigner talking about the US. Just take it from people who are born in the US, and so many of them, they speak the same, they say the same. After the publication of the Democratic Party emails, there was zero debate on the issue of whether the CIA would increase its spying on WikiLeaks. But there was still sensitivity on how they would collect on them. The CIA now considered people affiliated with WikiLeaks targets for various types of spying, including close-in technical collection, such as bugs, microphones, sometimes enabled by in-person espionage and remote operations, meaning, among other things, the hacking of WikiLeaks members' devices from far away. I don't know how they thought they will be able to accomplish this, but when WikiLeaks is leaking important documents, I'm pretty sure they will take extensive measures to protect themselves from being hacked, because that's the point of WikiLeaks, for documents to be leaked without people finding out where they have been leaked from, I think. The Obama administration's view of WikiLeaks underwent what Evanina, the CEO of Evanina Group, described as a sea change shortly before Donald Trump, helped in part by WikiLeaks' release of the Democratic campaign emails, won a surprise victory over Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Don't even get me started on Hillary Clinton. Only when I read the name and when I see the face, I'm already boiling. As Trump's national security team took their positions at the Justice Department and the CIA, officials wondered whether, despite his campaign trail declaration of love for WikiLeaks, Trump's appointees would take a more hardline view of the organization. And they were not to be disappointed. There was a fundamental change on how WikiLeaks was viewed. When it came to prosecuting Assange, something the Obama administration had declined to do, the Trump White House had a different approach. Nobody in that crew was going to be too broken up about the First Amendment issues. On April 13, 2017, Pompeo, the head of the CIA, went on the podium at the Center for Strategic and International Studies to deliver a speech as the director of the CIA. Rather than use the platform to give an overview of global challenges or to lay out any bureaucratic changes he was planning to make at the agency, Pompeo devoted much of his speech to the threat posed by WikiLeaks. Quote, "WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service and has encouraged its followers to find jobs at the CIA in order to obtain intelligence. It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is, a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia." End of quote. Yes, it had been 5 weeks since WikiLeaks stunned the CIA when it announced that it obtained a massive portion of files known as Vault 7 from the CIA's ultra-secret hacking division. Despite the CIA's ramped-up collection on Wikileaks, the announcement came as a complete surprise. But as soon as the organization posted the first materials on its website, the CIA knew it was facing a catastrophe. Vault 7 hurt the agency to its core, said the former CIA official. Agency officials used to laugh about Wikileaks, mocking the State Department and the Pentagon for allowing so much material to escape their control. Pompeo, apparently fearful of the president's wrath, was initially reluctant to even brief the president on Vault 7. Don't tell him, he doesn't need to know, Pompeo told one briefer, before being advised that the information was too critical and the president had to be informed. Senior FBI and NSA officials repeatedly demanded interagency meetings to determine the scope of the damage caused by Vault 7. The NSA believed that although the leak revealed only CIA hacking operations, it could also give countries like Russia or China clues about NSA targets and methods. Pompeo's aggressive tone at the briefing reflected his brash attitude. He would want to push the limits as much as he could during his tenure as CIA director. The Trump administration was sending more signals that it would no longer be bound by the Obama administration's self-imposed restrictions regarding Wikileaks. For some US intelligence officials, this was a welcome change. Vault 7 prompted a brand new mindset with the administration for rethinking how to look at Wikileaks as an adversarial actor. Updates on Assange were frequently included in the President's Daily Brief, a top-secret document prepared by US intelligence agencies that summarizes the day's most critical national security issues. The immediate question facing Pompeo and the CIA was how to hit back against Wikileaks and Assange. Agency officials found the answer in a legal sleight of hand. I told you, they'll always find a way around it. It's the CIA, man, and the US. Usually, for US intelligence to secretly interfere with the activities of any foreign actor, the president must sign a document called a finding that authorizes such covert action, which must also be briefed to the House and Senate intelligence committees. In very sensitive cases, notification is limited to Congress's so-called Gang of Eight, the 4 leaders of the House and Senate, plus the chairperson and ranking member of the 2 committees. But there is an important carve-out. Many of the same actions, if taken against another spy service, are considered offensive counterintelligence activities, which the CIA is allowed to conduct without getting a presidential finding or having to brief Congress. Often the CIA makes these decisions internally based on interpretations of so-called common law, passed down in secret with the agency's legal corps. I don't think people realize how much the CIA can do under offensive counterintelligence and how there is minimal oversight of it, said the former official. The difficulty in proving that Wikileaks was operating at the direct order of the Kremlin was a major factor behind the CIA's move to designate the group as a hostile intelligence service. There was a lot of legal debate if Wikileaks are operating as a Russian agent. It wasn't clear that they were, so the question was if it can be reframed on them being a hostile entity. Intelligence community lawyers decided that it could. Voila, they found a workaround. For many senior intelligence officials, Pompeo's designation of Wikileaks was a positive step. We all agreed that Wikileaks was a hostile intelligence organization and should be dealt with accordingly, said the former senior CIA official. Soon after the speech, Pompeo asked a small group of senior CIA officers to figure out the art of the possible when it came to Wikileaks. He said, "Nothing's off limits. Don't self-censor yourself. I need operational ideas from you. I'll worry about the lawyers in Washington." CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia sent messages directing CIA stations and bases worldwide to prioritize collection on Wikileaks. The CIA's designation of Wikileaks as a non-state hostile intelligence service enabled the doubling down of efforts globally and domestically on collection against the group. Those efforts included tracking the movements and communications of Assange and other top Wikileaks figures by tasking more on the tech side, recruiting more on the human side. This was not going to be easy. Wikileaks associates were really paranoid, and the CIA estimated that only a handful of individuals had access to the Vault 7 materials the agency wanted to retrieve. Those individuals employed security measures that made obtaining the information difficult, including keeping it on encrypted drives that they either carried on themselves or locked in safes. Wikileaks claimed it published only a fraction of the Vault 7 documents in its possession. So, what if US intelligence found a few of those unpublished materials online? At the White House, officials began planning for that. Could the United States launch a cyber attack on a server being used by Wikileaks to house these documents? Officials weren't sure if the Defense Department had the authority to do so at the time, without the president's signature. Alternatively, they suggested perhaps the CIA could carry out the same action under the agency's offensive counterintelligence powers. After all, the CIA would be erasing its own documents. However, US spies never located a copy of the unpublished Vault 7 materials online, so the discussion was ultimately debatable. But the CIA did have some success. By mid-2017, US spies had excellent intelligence on several Wikileaks members and associates, not just on Assange. This included what these individuals were saying and who they were saying it to, where they are traveling or going to be at a given date and time, and what platforms these individuals were communicating on. US spy agencies developed good intelligence on Wikileaks associates' patterns of life, particularly their travels within Europe. US intelligence was particularly keen on information documenting travel by Wikileaks associates to Russia or countries in the Russian orbit. At the CIA, the new designation meant Assange and Wikileaks would go from a target of collection to a target of disruption. Proposals began gaining traction within the CIA and the NSC to undertake various disruptive activities, the core of offensive counterintelligence against Wikileaks. These included paralyzing its digital infrastructure, disrupting its communications, provoking internal disputes within the organization by planting damaging information, and stealing Wikileaks members' electronic devices. Infiltrating the group, either with a real person or by inventing a cyber persona to gain the group's confidence, was quickly dismissed as unlikely to succeed because the senior Wikileaks figures were security conscious. Sowing discord within the group seemed an easier route to success, in part because those guys hated each other and they fought all the time. Some dude affiliated with Wikileaks was moving around the world and they wanted to go steal his computer because they thought he might have Vault 7 files. The official was unable to identify that individual, but some of these proposals may have been eventually approved. In December 2020, a German hacker closely affiliated with Wikileaks who assisted with the Vault 7 publications claimed that there was an attempt to break into his apartment, which he secured with an elaborate locking system. The hacker, Andy Myler-Magan, also said he was tailed by mysterious figures and his encrypted telephone was bugged. Asked whether the CIA broke into Wikileaks associate homes and stolen or wiped their hard drives, a former intelligence official declined to go into detail but said that some actions were taken. By the summer of 2017, the CIA's proposals were setting off alarm bells at the National Security Council. Wikileaks was a complete obsession of Pompeo's. After Vault 7, Pompeo and Deputy CIA Director Gina Haspel wanted vengeance on Assange. At meetings between senior Trump administration officials after Wikileaks started publishing the Vault 7 materials, Pompeo began discussing kidnapping Assange. While the notion of kidnapping Assange were discussed before Pompeo's arrival at Langley, the new director championed the proposals. Pompeo and others at the agency proposed abducting Assange from the embassy and sneakingly bringing him back to the United States via a third country, a process also known as rendition. The idea was to break into the embassy, drag Assange out and bring him to where we want, according to a former intelligence official. A less extreme version of the proposal involved US operatives snatching Assange from the embassy and turning him over to British authorities. Such actions were sure to create a diplomatic and political firestorm, as they would have involved violating the sanctity of the Ecuadorian embassy before kidnapping the citizen of a critical US partner, Australia, in the capital of the United Kingdom, the United States' closest ally. Trying to seize Assange from an embassy in the British capital struck some as ridiculous. This isn't Pakistan or Egypt, we are talking about London, a former official said. Former officials differ on how much the UK government knew about the CIA's rendition plans for Assange, but at some point, American officials did raise the issue with their British counterparts. There was a discussion with the Brits about turning the other cheek or looking the other way when a team of guys went inside and did a rendition. But the British said, "No way, you're not doing that on our territory, that ain't happening." In addition to diplomatic concerns about rendition, some NSC officials believed that abducting Assange would be clearly illegal. "You can't throw people in a car and kidnap them," said the former national security official. In fact, the same former official said this was the key question. Was it possible to render Assange under the CIA's offensive counterintelligence authorities? In this former official's thinking, those powers were meant to enable traditional spy versus spy activities, not the same kind of crap we pulled in the war on terror. Some discussions even went beyond kidnapping. US officials also considered killing Assange, according to 3 former officials. One of those officials said he was briefed on a spring 2017 meeting in which the president asked whether the CIA could assassinate Assange and provide him options for how to do so. It was viewed as unhinged and ridiculous, recalled this former senior CIA official of the suggestion. It's unclear how serious the proposals to kill Assange really were. "I was told they were just spitballing," said the former senior counterintelligence official briefed on the discussions about kinetic options regarding the Wikileaks founder. It was just Trump being Trump. It's not even surprising that Assange seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy. He knew that something like this might be happening. He knew that that the CIA and the US officials would be planning something like this. At roughly the same time, agency executives requested and received sketches of plans for killing Assange and other Europe-based Wikileaks members who had access to Vault 7 materials. There were discussions on whether killing Assange was possible and whether it was legal, a former official said. Yahoo News couldn't confirm if these proposals made it to the White House. Some officials with knowledge of the rendition proposals said they heard no discussion about assassinating Assange. In a statement to Yahoo News, Trump denied that he ever considered having Assange assassinated. "It's totally false. It never happened," he said. Trump seemed to express some sympathy for Assange's plight. "In fact, I think he's been treated very badly," he added. Whatever Trump's view of the matter at the time, his NSC lawyers were against the CIA potentially illegal proposals. While people think the Trump administration didn't believe in the rule of law, they had good lawyers who were paying attention to it, said the former senior intelligence official. The rendition talk alarmed senior administration officials. John Eisenberg, the top NSC lawyer, and Michael Ellis, his deputy, worried that Pompeo is advocating things that are not likely to be legal, including rendition-type activity. Eisenberg wrote to CIA General Counsel Courtney Simmons Elwood expressing his concerns about the agency's WikiLeaks-related proposals. It's unclear how much Elwood knew about the proposals. When Pompeo took over, he cut the lawyers out of a lot of things. NSC officials worried about the timing of the potential Assange kidnapping. Discussions about rendering Assange took place before the Justice Department filed any criminal charges against him, even under seal, meaning that the CIA could have kidnapped Assange from the embassy without any legal basis to try him in the United States. Eisenberg urged Justice Department officials to accelerate their drafting of charges against Assange in case the CIA's rendition plans move forward. The White House told Attorney General Jeff Sessions that if prosecutors had grounds to indict Assange, they should hurry up and do so. Things got more complicated in May 2017, when the Swedes dropped their rape investigation into Assange, who always denied the allegations. White House officials developed a backup plan. The British would hold Assange on a bail jumping charge, giving Justice Department prosecutors a 48-hour delay to rush through an indictment. Eisenberg was concerned about the legal implications of rendering Assange without criminal charges in place. Without an indictment, where would the agency bring him, said another former official who attended NSC meetings on the topic. Were we going to go back to black sites? As US officials debated the legality of kidnapping Assange, they came to believe that they were racing against the clock. Intelligence reports warned that Russia had its own plans to sneak the WikiLeaks leader out of the embassy and fly him to Moscow. The United States had exquisite collection of his plans and intentions. We were very confident that we were able to mitigate any of those escape attempts, Evanina said. Officials became concerned when suspected Russian operatives in diplomatic vehicles near the Ecuadorian embassy were observed practicing a starburst maneuver, a common tactic for spy services whereby multiple operatives suddenly scatter to escape surveillance. This may have been a practice run for an exfiltration, potentially coordinated with the Ecuadorians, to get Assange out of the embassy and whisk him out of the country. The Ecuadorians would tip off the Russians that they were going to be releasing Assange on the street, and then the Russians would pick him up and spirit him back to Russia, said the former national security official. Officials developed multiple tactical plans to stop any Kremlin attempt to take Assange, some of which envisioned clashes with Russian operatives in the British capital. There could be anything from a fist fight to a gunfight to cars running into each other, said the former senior Trump administration official. US officials disagreed over how to stop Assange if he attempted to escape. A proposal to initiate a car crash to halt Assange's vehicle was not only a borderline or extra-legal course of action, something we do in Afghanistan but not in the UK, but was also particularly sensitive since Assange was likely going to be transported in a Russian diplomatic vehicle. If the Russians managed to get Assange onto a plane, US or British operatives would prevent it from taking off by blocking it with a car on the runway, hovering a helicopter over it, or shooting out its tires. In the unlikely event that the Russians succeeded in getting airborne, officials planned to ask European countries to deny the plane overflight rights. Eventually, the US and the UK developed a joint plan to prevent Assange from absconding and giving Vladimir Putin the sort of propaganda coup he had enjoyed when Snowden fled to Russia in 2013. Evanina declined to comment on the plans to prevent Assange from escaping to Russia, but he suggested that the Five Eyes intelligence alliance between the US, the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand was critical. We were very confident within the Five Eyes that we would be able to prevent him from going there, he said. But testimony in a Spanish criminal investigation strongly suggests that US intelligence may also have had inside help keeping tabs on Assange's plans. By late 2015, Ecuador hired a Spanish security company called UC Global to protect the country's London embassy, where Assange had already spent several years running Wikileaks from his living quarters. Unknown to Ecuador, however, by mid-2017, UC Global was also working for US intelligence, according to two former employees who testified in a Spanish criminal investigation first reported by the newspaper El Pas. The Spanish firm was providing US intelligence agencies with detailed reports of Assange's activities and visitors, as well as video and audio surveillance of Assange from secretly installed devices in the embassy. The employee testified, "Surely that should have been illegal, right?" A former US national security official confirmed that US intelligence had access to video and audio feeds of Assange within the embassy, but declined to specify how exactly it acquired them. By December 2017, the plan to get Assange to Russia seemed to be ready. UC Global learned that Assange would receive a diplomatic passport from Ecuadorian authorities with the aim of leaving the embassy to transit to a third state. On December 15, Ecuador made Assange an official diplomat of that country and planned to assign him to its embassy in Moscow. Assange said he was not aware of the plan struck by the Ecuadorian foreign minister to assign him to Moscow, and refused to accept that assignment, said Fidel Narvaez, who was the first secretary at the Ecuadorian embassy in London in 2017 and 2018. Narvaez told Yahoo News that he was directed by his superiors to try and get Assange accredited as a diplomat to the London embassy. However, Ecuador did have a plan B, said Narvaez, and I understood it was to be Russia. Heitor Martinez, a Spanish lawyer for Assange who worked closely with Ecuador on getting Assange his diplomat status, also said the Ecuadorian foreign minister presented the Russia assignment to Assange as a fait accompli, something he can't decline, and that Assange, when he heard about it, immediately rejected the idea. On December 21st, the Justice Department secretly charged Assange, increasing the chances of legal extradition to the US. That same day, UC Global recorded a meeting held between Assange and the head of Ecuador's intelligence service to discuss Assange's escape plan. Hours after the meeting, the US ambassador relayed his knowledge of the plan to his Ecuadorian counterparts. The plan, organized by the head of Ecuadorian intelligence to sneak Assange out of the London embassy and onward as a diplomat to a third country, was cancelled after they learned the Americans were aware of it. But US intelligence officials believed Russia planned to exfiltrate Assange, reportedly on Christmas Eve. According to the former UC Global employee, the company's boss discussed with his American contacts the possibility of leaving the embassy door open as if by accident, which would allow persons to enter from outside the embassy and kidnap the asylee. In testimony first reported in The Guardian, another idea also took shape. Even the possibility of poisoning Mr. Assange was discussed. Even Assange appeared to fear assassination. Some Vault 7 material, which CIA officials believed to be even more damaging than the files Wikileaks had published, had been distributed among Assange's colleagues with instructions to publish it if one of them were killed. Bravo, Assange, bravo! This is the best thing ever. That's how you negotiate your life, honestly. A primary question for US officials was whether any CIA plan to kidnap or potentially kill Assange was legal. Some officials believed this was a highly aggressive and likely legally transgressive interpretation of these powers. Without a presidential finding, the directive used to justify covert operations assassinating Assange or other Wikileaks members would be illegal. The CIA's newfound offensive counterintelligence powers regarding Wikileaks would not have stretched to assassination. That kind of lethal action would be way outside of a legitimate intelligence or counterintelligence activity, a former senior intelligence community lawyer said. In the end, the assassination discussions went nowhere. The idea of killing Assange didn't get serious traction. Inside the White House, Pompeo's arguments on Wikileaks were making little headway. The director's most aggressive proposals were probably taken seriously in Langley, but not within the NSC. Even Sessions, Trump's anti-Assange Attorney General, was opposed to CIA's infringement onto Justice Department territory and believed that the Wikileaks founders' case was best handled through legal channels. Sessions' concern mirrored the tensions between the ramped-up intelligence collection and disruption efforts aimed at Wikileaks and the Justice Department's goal of convicting Assange in open court. The more aggressive the CIA's proposals became, the more other US officials worried about what the discovery process might reveal if Assange were to face trial in the US. I was part of every one of those conversations, Evanina said. As much as we had the greener light to go do things, everything we did or wanted to do had repercussions in other parts of the administration. As a result, he said, sometimes administration officials would ask the intelligence community to either not do something or do it differently, so that we don't have to sacrifice our collection that's going to be released publicly by the Bureau to indict Wikileaks. Eventually, those within the administration arguing for an approach based in the courts rather than an espionage and covert action won the policy debate. On April 11, 2019, after Ecuador's new government revoked his asylum and evicted him, British police carried the Wikileaks founder out of the embassy and arrested him for failing to surrender to the court over a warrant issued in 2012. The US government unsealed its initial indictment of Assange the same day. That indictment focused exclusively on allegations that in 2010 Assange offered to help Manning, the Army intelligence analyst, crack a password to break into a classified US government network, an act that would have gone beyond journalism. But in a move that drew howls from press advocates, prosecutors later tacked on Espionage Act charges against Assange for publishing classified information, something that US media outlets do regularly. Assange's legal odyssey appears to have only just begun. In January, a British judge ruled Assange could not be extradited to the US, finding that he would be a suicide risk in a US prison. Although Assange supporters hoped the Biden administration might drop the case, the US appealed the decision. In July, a UK court formally permitted the US appeal to proceed. Pollack, Assange's lawyer, told Yahoo News that if Assange is extradited to face trial, the extreme nature of the type of government misconduct that you're reporting would certainly be an issue and potentially grounds for dismissal. He likened to measures used to target Assange to those deployed by the Nixon administration against Daniel Ellsberg for leaking the Pentagon Papers, noting the charges against Ellsberg were ultimately dismissed as well. Meanwhile, Wikileaks may be increasingly obsolete. The growing ability of groups and individuals, whistleblowers or dissidents, spies or criminals, to publish leaked materials online diminishes the group's purpose. Yet, spy services are increasingly using a Wikileaks-like model of posting stolen materials online. In 2018, the Trump administration granted the CIA aggressive new secret authorities to undertake the same sort of hack and dump operations for which Russian intelligence has used Wikileaks. Among other actions, the agency used its new powers to covertly release information online about a Russian company that worked with Moscow's spy apparatus. For a former Trump national security official, the lesson of the CIA's campaign against Wikileaks are clear. There was an inappropriate level of attention to Assange given the embarrassment, not the threat he posed in context. We should never act out of a desire for revenge. And with this, I reached the end of the video. I just want to point out one thing. I honestly believe that in the end, the CIA and the US government will eventually find a way of making Assange disappear, as in, you know, in my opinion. This always happens. And thank you so much for joining me and for staying with me in this very long video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Also, please make sure if you enjoyed watching this video, give it a thumbs up, or if you didn't like it, a thumbs down. Either way, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps me and my channel, as YouTube will be pushing the video on the platform. The more engagement it gets, the more it will be pushed. Again, thank you so much guys, stay safe and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!